If you've been playing guitar for a while, you should be familiar with the type 1 bar chord or the E-shaped bar chord. It looks like this. And you should also know that you can move it around the neck like this to create different chords. And you can also adjust different notes of the chord to create different chord types. What I want to show you today is how to make small changes to the notes in this chord shape to make different chord types, chords that you can use in your playing, and I think you'll learn a little bit about harmony and music theory as we go along. So to begin, we need to analyze the notes in this simple bar chord shape, starting with the lowest note. And so the lowest note is the root note. In this case, it's an A because I'm at the 5th fret. Then in order going up, there's the 5th, another root, the 3rd, another 5th, and a root on top. A couple of things to notice here. First, we have 3 root notes. Next, we have 2 fifths and 1 third. This is going to be important as we make adjustments, since we'll be altering different chord tones to make the different chord types. The first 3 chords are going to cover all 6 strings, and then we're going to drop a couple of strings for the last 5 chords that we're going to cover. But we're going to stay in the same general position so that you can use this bar chord as a framework to see all of these chord voicings. The first alteration I want to show you is to change the major bar chord into a dominant bar chord. This would also be called a 7 chord. If you know basic chord theory, you'd know that a major triad is made up of the 1st, 3rd, and 5th of a major scale, and a dominant chord has a 7 in it, but it's not the natural 7 that would occur in the major scale. It's a flat 7, which is a lowered 7th by a half step. So it's the 1, the 3, the 5, and the flat 7. So we'll take the root note that we were playing on the 4th string and lower that by 2 half steps to arrive at the flat 7. And this gives us our basic 7th or dominant chord. And this is an A7 because I'm at the 5th fret. This shape lends itself to a great sounding pattern that you can use for improvisation. It's a blues pattern that is simple and fun and sounds great. And so I want to show you that quick in case you aren't familiar with it. So we're going to take this basic A7 chord and leave off our 2nd finger. So what we're actually playing is an A minor 7, but just for one short moment. Once I strum, I'm going to immediately hammer on with my 2nd finger. So we're going to add a riff that uses the 3rd finger now to bar strings 2, 3, and 4 before returning to the original chord, like this. So you can play progressions with this riff, and almost any time that you have a dominant chord, this riff will work. So I'm going to show a basic progression here. So here's a simple 1 to 4 chord pattern, just playing this riff on A and then D. Next, we're going to pair 2 chords together, and this is the minor triad bar chord and the minor 7 chord. So if we take the major bar chord, in order to change it to a minor, we just have to lower the 3rd by a half step. Since our only 3rd is here on the 3rd string, we just lower that a half step, and now we have a minor chord. You can go back and forth between the major and the minor bar chords in order to make diatonic chord progressions like this. So now we're going to take the minor chord and we're going to make it a minor 7th chord by lowering the root on the 4th string down a whole step to the flat 7. There are many notes that are easy to reach in this position, and you can use those notes to embellish this chord by just creating motion around the chord tones. Next, we're going to move into a different chord arrangement. Like I said earlier, we're going to drop 2 strings, and we're going to be playing the notes on the 6th string, the 4th string, the 3rd string, and the 2nd string. We're going to use this basic note arrangement in order to play the 5 main types of 7th chords. Those are the major 7, the dominant 7, the minor 7, the half-diminished, and the diminished 7. So we're going to do all of those in this same basic position by manipulating one note at a time. If we look at the arrangement of notes, once we have pulled the 5th string and the 1st string out of our bar chord, we have the root on bottom, then we have a root an octave up on the 4th string, then we have the 3rd on the 3rd string, and the 2nd on the 5th on the 2nd string, the 5th of the chord on the 2nd string. Starting at the A major bar chord, we're going to drop out the note on the 1st string and the note on the 5th string. This is going to leave us with the 6th, 4th, 3rd, and 2nd strings. So we're going to immediately move to the first 7th chord type by moving the root note on the 4th string down to the major 7, which is a half step below it. The major 7 chord is made up of the 1st, 3rd, 5th, and 7th notes of the major scale. As we move through these, remember that just like the bar chord shapes, these are movable to anywhere on the neck. So just keep track of the chord type and the root note, and you'll know what chord you're playing. Next, we're going to change it into a dominant chord by lowering the 7th, the major 7, into a flat 7. So this voicing takes all 4 fingers for me, but you can see how it relates to the A7 we played earlier. We've just dropped the 5th and 1st strings from that voicing. So a quick note here about strumming or plucking this chord. You'll need to either mute the 5th and the 1st strings to strum these chords by letting your hand relax slightly so that you can lightly touch the 5th string and the 1st string. That way when you strum, those notes will be muted and will add a bit of percussive sound. So if you want to get a cleaner plucked sound, you can use hybrid picking or finger style to isolate those strings and pluck them, avoiding the strings that you don't want to play. So from there, we're going to lower the 3rd to make it into a minor 7. So from the dominant, we want to lower the note on the 3rd string by a half step, and now we can cover all 3 of the upper notes with a single finger, barring across the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th strings. I prefer to use my 2nd and 3rd fingers like this, but can also use my 1st and 2nd fingers. The last 2 types of 7th chords that we're going to cover are the half-diminished 7 and the fully diminished 7. And these are a little less common. The half-diminished chord occurs in the regular major scale as the note that's built, or the chord that's built off of the 7th of the scale. So it's the 7 chord built off the 7th of the scale. And you'll see why it's less common because it has a sort of tense sound, and the diminished chord also does. But there's a nice trick with the diminished chord that I'll show you. So second to last, we have a half-diminished chord, which is a minor 7 with the 5th lowered by a half step. This takes 4 fingers to play, and the shape on strings 2, 3, and 4 looks just like the same strings in the major 7 chord, just moved down a half step. So the final chord type that we'll cover here is the fully diminished 7. So moving from the half diminished, we can make the fully diminished chord by lowering the flat 7 by 1 more half step. Now we can bar our 1st finger at the 4th fret to cover the 2nd and 4th strings, with our 2nd finger playing the root and our 3rd finger playing the flat 3. This type of chord has the unique quality of being made of symmetrical intervals. What that means in application is that any fully diminished 7th chord voicing can be inverted without changing the shape. Just move it around. Just move it around 3 frets at a time and you're inverting the chord. Most other chord types have a different fingering for every inversion, so that's a fun trick with diminished chords that you can move around the neck. If you move 3 frets at a time, you'll be inverting the same chord, so it's a fun way to play with different sounds. I'm going to conclude this video by showing a couple of different chord patterns that use these voicings, and you can feel free to practice the ones that I come up with, or come up with your own and be creative with these chords, play around with them, and try different rhythms. And I think that you'll find that they sound really nice and are very useful. Spend some time exploring the sound differences between these different seventh chord types. They're all used in different types of scenarios, so it's really important to become familiar with their different qualities and characteristics. And you can try picking them out in music that you listen to. A lot of music, a lot of popular music uses more just triads, but you'll find seventh chords in jazz music and R&B music, in rock music and blues music. There's a lot of dominant chords. So anyway, you'll hear them around, so listen for them. So the first chord pattern is going to be a simple walk up from the 1 chord through the 2 and 3 up to the 4 and then 5. So we're covering 5 of the 7 diatonic chords, starting on a major 7, then minor 7, minor 7, major 7, then dominant 7. So the rhythm goes like this. Finally, we're going to do one last progression, and this one is going to use the minor 7 flat 5 or half diminished chord. That's another name for it. And also the fully diminished 7 chord. And the fully diminished 7, like I said, is not diatonic to the major scale, but I'm going to use it in this progression in a way that you might typically see it. And I'm also going to show a little way that you can use that trick that I said about inverting it. So here's that progression. We'll start on A major 7 like before, this time moving down to the G sharp half diminished, which is the chord built off of the 7th note of the scale. We're going to move down again to F sharp minor 7, the 6th chord at the 2nd fret, before we move back up to G sharp, this time playing the fully diminished voicing and then inverting it by moving the whole shape up a minor 3rd. So the whole pattern goes like this. Lastly, what I'm going to do is put these 2 progressions together and play them twice each to make a little pattern that you can practice to work on these chord voicings. That's going to do it for this video, but if you like this, please subscribe and like the video. You can check out my website, practicemakesbettermusic.com, and if you find the post about this lesson, there will be a free PDF there with all of the chord diagrams that I included in this video. So you can also sign up for my mailing list there to receive a free course that I built about pentatonics and how you can connect them across the neck.